So this video series titled Everything You Need to Know About the Stock Market will equip you with all the financial knowledge you would need so that when someone tells you this,
ये टाटा बिरला अंबानी अपना देवी प्रसाद इन लोग अमीर कैसे बना? इसका सीक्रेट मिल गया है।
सिगरेट पीता वो?
सिगरेट नहीं यार बाबू भैया, सीक्रेट। वो लोग क्या करते हैं ना, सारा पैसा ना चिट फंड में डालते हैं। 21 दिन बाद पैसा डबल, उसके और 21 दिन बाद पैसा 4 गुना, उसके और 21 दिन बाद पैसा
8 गुना,
उसके
16 गुना, 32 गुना।
you can tell them this.
मार साले का खोपड़ी तोड़ साले का।
Because by then you would know the difference between the right way of investing and the wrong way of investing. So here, what you have learned so far and what you are about to learn is going to help you answer the big question: what stocks should I buy? So this lecture series is going to be split up into 3 parts. Now this is very interesting because here we are going to cover 1. Certain concepts related to the stock market. 2. How to read a company's financial statements, which is basically the income statement, the balance sheet and the cash flow statement. And for those of you all not from a commerce background, don't fret, we have you covered too. And 3rd, we are going to do a live case study of a company and decide whether the company is worth buying or not. So here, let's start with the first part of the stock market series. Concepts, terms and jargons that are related to the stock market. So before we start, let's just take a preview of what all we are going to cover in this. Financial assets versus physical assets, IPO and secondary market. We have already touched upon this in an earlier video. The link should be somewhere here just in case you want to catch that video before this. Private equity versus public equity, cash market versus future market, rights of an equity shareholder, participants of the stock market, timings of the equity markets, bid price versus ask price. This is a very interesting section of this video. Market order versus limit order, stop loss and target while trading, face value, issue price and market value of a stock, stock split, stock consolidation, rights issue and bonus shares, and last but not the least, share buyback. Whew, I hope I didn't miss anything out. So the next time you come across some articles or some opinions in maybe the newspaper or a news channel, maybe like some of the things I'm just going to quote, you would be in a much better position to understand this. FPIs have been net sellers in the equity markets and have pulled out 3,000 crores so far. Just to let you know, FPIs is a category of investor. Flipkart has raised close to $1.3 billion so far in 2020 through private equity. Company XYZ has declared a 300% dividend. Don't get too excited yet, we'll see later why. A company has declared a 1:1 bonus issue. We all love the word bonus, don't we? Alright, so now let's get started. Let's start by comparing financial assets to physical assets. We are all well versed with this famous dialogue from Diwar.
आज मेरे पास बिल्डिंगें हैं, प्रॉपर्टी है, बैंक बैलेंस है, बंगला है, गाड़ी है.
Now here, Makan and Gadi are examples of physical assets. Now being Indians, we all are well versed with our ancestral tradition of investing in gold. Now gold that is bought in physical form is an example of a physical asset. Now in सब में common क्या है? The fact that they are tangible, which means that you can touch them physically. Hence the name physical assets. Now when you make an investment, you have an option to invest either in a physical asset like we just saw or a financial asset. Now examples of financial assets are stocks or equity, bonds, or for that matter even our bank FDs. What about maybe copyrights and patents or trademarks? Well, these are also examples of financial assets. Now, from the perspective of a company company in the assets side of its balance sheet records its physical assets such as building or plant and machinery. But what about its financial assets? Maybe investments that it has done in maybe equities or mutual funds or bonds, or for that matter even maybe some patent that it has. So it's like how we play that game of peekaboo with babies, where we hide our face briefly and then reappear before them, but all along we are right there, but just that the baby can't see us. Well, financial assets are just like that. They are very much there and a part of the company's assets, even though we cannot see them. Hence, a company needs to record all its assets on its balance sheet, whether physical or financial. Now, an important feature of physical assets is that they have a limited useful life. Now, where are you seeing this video, for example? On your laptop or your phone? Now, the value of these gadgets is not going to be the same, or maybe a few months or a few years from today. If you were to go and sell this in the market, you are going to get the same price at which you had bought it, which means that the value of this is decreasing. This decreasing value of any asset is what is known as depreciation. If a company invests in a piece of machinery, that machine is not going to last forever. It would have a limited useful life, after which it would have to get replaced. Now, similarly, as the company is experiencing wear and tear each year, the company has to record for its depreciation in such a way that by the end of the useful life of the asset, the value of the asset is zero and the company has to replace that asset. Now let's come to IPO versus the secondary market. A company issues equity to raise money, which could be for various reasons, such as maybe expansion plans that it has, or maybe setting up a research and development center, paying off some debt, or maybe expanding some product lines, for example. Now this it has to do through an IPO or an initial public offering. Now, when a company actually goes in for an IPO, it has to draft what is known as a red herring prospectus. In case there is an IPO that you wish to apply for, the red herring prospectus is a must read. It's like saying, ये company की कुंडली है. Why? Because everything about the company is present in that one document. It has details about the company, what the company does, the risks that the company may face, the industry that the company belongs to, if the company has any debt or obligations it needs to pay off, and most importantly, the objective with which the company is raising that money and what it intends to do with that money. Now, after the IPO, the shares of the company are listed at the exchange and now the company is a public limited company. But what if a company is already a listed company and it wants to raise more money, say after a few months or a few years? Then that would not be known as an initial public offering, but would be known as a follow-on offering. Now coming to the secondary market. Now, secondary market is where investors buy and sell shares between themselves. Now, why is the secondary market so important in this entire process? It is because the secondary market gives liquidity to the primary market. Means what? Say that I bought shares of a certain company in an IPO and after a few months I wanted to sell off my shares. Now, if it wasn't for the secondary market where so many buyers come together to buy and sell between themselves, then I would actually have to literally go out of my way to find a buyer for my shares because I wouldn't actually know where to look. I would also maybe have to say shares le lo, but okay, thankfully since the secondary market is there, I don't have to do that. Which brings us to the question, what is the difference between public equity, where we have the primary and secondary market, and private equity? Now we just went through how the general public can buy shares in an IPO and can buy and sell shares in the secondary market through the stock exchange. Now this is public equity. Now you may have heard in the news about Walmart investing into Flipkart, or for that matter, even the education technology firm Byju's, which is valued at more than $10 billion now and has been on a fundraising spree. Now you know what the interesting part is? Neither Flipkart nor Byju's is a publicly listed company. Now the obvious question here is that from where are they getting their money and who is giving it to them? So they are actually raising money from what is known as the private markets. These markets have certain private equity players or even some categories of high net worth individuals who can invest into these companies. Now, the valuation and of course even the returns on these companies could be incredible. But on the flip side, these companies can be illiquid, which means that it could be a very long time before you could actually sell off your stake in this company. Also remember that not every private equity funded company is a success. So the risks also could be higher. Moreover, unlike publicly listed companies, privately funded companies are not required to publish their financial statements in the public domain. So if I were an institutional investor or a private equity player or a high net worth individual, I could have invested in such a company. But unfortunately, I'm none of these. So let's say that I tell you a stock, let's take a hypothetical name, say Chocolate Limited, because I love chocolates. So anyway, let's say that Chocolate Limited is trading at 100 rupees right now. But in the futures market, it is trading at 105. Now you may be looking at me thinking, what a weirdo. I mean, does she know the price of the stock in the future? Does she think she's an astrologer or something? Valid point. I don't know the price of the stock, but I can definitely take a guess, right? Even though that guess could go wrong. This is what the futures market is all about. So the market that we're all quite familiar with is known as the cash market or the spot market. So in this market, the price of a stock is known in real time. So say that during market hours, I want to check the price of a stock. I will get to know the price of that particular security at that very second. So say that Chocolate Limited is trading at 102 and I execute a trade at 102. So that is the price at which I would have bought the company and I would now be a shareholder of one share of Chocolate Limited. Since I am now the shareholder or part owner, I will also be entitled to any dividends that the company will be declaring. In the futures market, a stock futures contract can be traded at a predetermined price and on a predetermined date. Now, say for example, I believe that Chocolate Limited price is going to go up, say 2 months from today for example. So what I can do is that I can buy a futures contract of Chocolate Limited which expires in 2 months. So that after 2 months, if the price of that stock has actually gone up, I end up with profits. So futures can get a little technical, so we will be taking up separate videos on this. Now a simple question that you may have is that if I am expecting the stock price to go up, why should I rack my brains into investing in the futures market when I can just plain simply buy a share in the spot market? The simple answer to that is that the futures market can give you much higher returns than you could get in the cash market or the spot market. But bear in mind that the losses could also be much higher. And another thing is that if you invest in the futures market, you don't become an owner or a shareholder of the company. Hence, you are also not entitled to any dividends that the company may declare for the period that you actually hold those futures contracts. So just remember, don't invest into the futures market without first understanding what it is, what it entails, or what its risks are. Because that would actually be like playing blind in a game of poker without knowing what your cards are. And trust me, in the futures market, playing blind is a bet you would not want to take. Now let's get to what are the rights of an equity shareholder. Equity shares are also known as common stock or ordinary shares. Now, when you become an equity shareholder, you are entitled to certain rights. The first is right to dividend. Now, as an equity shareholder, you are entitled to receive any dividends that the company declares. Now, dividends are declared by a company and paid out of the operating profits of the company. But be rest assured, if you are an equity shareholder of a company, any time that dividends are declared, you would be entitled to a proportionate share. The second is voting rights. So even if you own just one share of a company, you are still an owner of the company, even if that ownership means 0.00001%. But nonetheless, to the extent of your ownership, you are allowed to vote on important matters of the company, such as electing the board of directors of the company, or extending any loan to any such director, or for that matter, if the company is going to undertake any merger or acquisition activity, and even any stock split, or for that matter, even any share buyback. Every vote counts, and so does yours. Now, the third right that you have as an equity shareholder is the right to residual claim. Now, let's understand what this is. So, let's say that you are the owner of a shop and you decide to wind up your business and shut down. Now, what you would want to do is you would want to sell off whatever furniture you have in the shop, or for that matter, even any leftover inventory. And whatever it is that you manage to collect, and also the profits that you would have earned over the years, you put that all together, and then what you would want to do is pay off whatever debt you have, such as any loan you may have taken from the bank, or maybe any supplier that you have to pay for goods you may have bought on credit. And whatever is left after paying off all these obligations is what is known as residual claim. Now, similarly, equity shareholders are entitled to any of the company's assets and any of the profits that the company has earned over the years, but only after all the debt holders of the company have been paid off. And whatever is left belongs to the equity shareholders. Now, when we come to part 2 of the stock market series, we are going to understand a concept known as retained earnings, which is part of the balance sheet of a company. And that concept is related to this concept of residual claim. So we will understand that in much more detail in the second section. Now, the fourth right, which may sound too obvious but nonetheless has to be mentioned, is the right to capital gains. It is the right that you have earned when you have purchased the stock to actually earn a profit when you sell the stock. And that is nothing but the right to capital gains. Who are the participants in the stock market? Do you know that we are just a small speck in this huge ecosystem of the stock market? When we buy a stock, we just understand that, okay, now we own this stock, and whenever we want, we can go and sell it, and we are entitled to dividends and capital gains. But what we don't understand is that there are a host of institutions behind these trades to ensure that our purchases and sales transactions are as smooth as possible. So let's look at the market participants one by one. Now, right at the top, we have the market regulator, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, or more fondly known as SEBI. Now, SEBI is our eyes in the sky. If small investors like us want our interests to be protected, then SEBI is the only institution who can protect our interests and ensure that it is kept that way. So let's say that the price of a stock moves up violently, and looking at this price movement, investors, maybe including you and me, get tempted to invest in that stock, thinking that this winning streak would continue. But guess what? The next day, the price of the stock crashes, and we, along with so many more investors who got caught up in this trap, lost a lot of money. It turns out that a set of large investors were manipulating the price of this market till a point where it was expensive enough, after which they sold off all their holdings, made a lot of money, and were just sitting pretty. But did they actually think they would get away with this? No way. SEBI cracks down on market manipulations like this to ensure that investors' interests are protected and market perpetrators like these are taken to task. It also ensures that the stock markets and the stock brokers are functioning fairly. In short, SEBI is like the police for maintaining law and order in the stock market, so that everybody in the stock market is functioning at the highest moral standards. Now, the second market participant is the stock market. Now, I'll not get into much detail here since I have already covered this before, and you'll probably find the link somewhere here, so you can click on the video and watch it. But National Stock Exchange and the Bombay Stock Exchange are the two stock exchanges in India that allow investors to buy and sell securities in the secondary market. Now, the third market participant is banks. Now, I think it's not been said enough that banks are actually the backbone of an economy. Now, if we don't have money lying in our bank account, we would not be able to buy and sell shares, because we cannot literally use cash, can we? So basically, you can transfer money from your bank account to your Demat account, and from your Demat account back to your bank account whenever required. In short, only those bank accounts that are linked to your Demat account can actually be used for buying and selling of shares. The fourth market participant are depository or depository participants. Now, you know how a bank holds our money as deposits? Similarly, depositories or depository participants hold our shares as deposits. So it is only through these depositories can we actually buy and sell shares through our Demat accounts. Now remember that shares in our Demat account are held in an electronic format. Now, the fifth market participant is the clearing corporation. Now, just like a bank would send a check that maybe you may have drawn for clearing, after which it debits your account and credits another's account. Similarly, in the stock market, the clearing corporation matches the transaction for purchase of shares to the sale of shares, and accordingly it will credit the account of the seller of shares and debit the account of the purchaser of shares. The sixth participant are stockbrokers. Now, there are various stockbrokers who are registered with the stock exchange and who can buy and sell shares on behalf of their clients, who could be individuals or they could also be institutions. Now, these stockbrokers could give valuable inputs about the markets, and for which they also charge a commission in return. Now, the seventh and the last participant of the stock market are the investors. Now, we as individual investors are only one of the many categories of investors who participate in the stock market. So let's look at who the others are. Now, NRIs or non-resident Indians are also allowed to participate in the stock market, but within a very restricted framework which is dictated by the regulator. Another category is DII or domestic institutional investor. Now, say for example that we invest in an equity mutual fund. Now, what does the fund manager of that mutual fund do? He finally goes and invests money into the stock market. So a mutual fund is an example of a domestic institutional investor. What about maybe a pension fund or even maybe an insurance company for that matter? Do they participate in the stock markets? Yes, they do. And they are also examples of domestic institutional investors. Now, another category of investors is known as FPI or foreign portfolio investors. Now, we just saw how mutual funds and pension funds and insurance companies that are based in India and invest into the Indian stock market form part of the domestic institutional investors. Now, what about institutions like these that are based out of foreign countries but invest in our country? They would be part of the foreign portfolio investor base. Now, investments made by the FPIs gives an indication of what the rest of the world thinks of the Indian markets, whether India makes for a good investment opportunity or not. So FPIs actually have their own set of advantages, but they also come with their own set of disadvantages. The advantage of foreign investments is that it helps to increase the country's foreign exchange reserves or forex. And also because the Indian companies would be analyzed under the international lens, it encourages the Indian companies to maintain utmost transparency, efficiency and discipline. The disadvantage is that this money is not stable in nature. So if the outlook on India turns negative, this money can flow out of India overnight. And maybe that is why this money is also known as hot money. Coming to our next section, what are the timings of the equity market? Equity markets are open on weekdays from 9:15 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon. Now, equity markets also need to breathe, revive and rejuvenate and maybe even go on a weekend getaway. That is why equity markets are shut on Saturday and Sunday and on some public holidays as well. If you are someone who wants to buy shares on Diwali because you think it is auspicious, but since markets will be shut on Diwali, it is not possible, well, let me tell you something. Equity markets are actually open on Diwali day during the Lakshmi Pujan time for about an hour, so that you can actually go and buy your Shagun shares. Now coming to a very interesting section. What is a bid price and what is an ask price? Now here you may be wondering, what am I having to bid for or what am I having to ask for when I am buying a stock? Now, just like how you would bid for something, similarly the bid price is what a broker or dealer would pay to buy a stock. It is the highest possible price that they would be willing to pay. On the other hand, the ask price is the lowest price till where a broker or dealer would go to sell his stock in the stock market. When you are about to buy a stock through your Demat account, you would see these bid ask prices there. Let's take an example. Say the bid ask for a stock ABC Limited is 100.2. This means that the highest bid someone has put to buy the stock is at 100 rupees. and the lowest or best rate someone has put to sell that stock is 100.2 rupees. And the difference between the two is what is called the bid ask spread, which in this case is 20 paise. Now if 100 to 100.2 is the current bid ask price, what is the price that you would have to pay to buy that stock? It is 100.2. And why is that? Because that is the lowest and the best offer that the seller is offering to you right now in the market. Remember that the bid ask price is changing continuously. So it is possible that the average price that you have got when you have bought these shares is different from the bid ask price that was showing up on your screen when you hit that buy button. Now coming to what is a market order and what is a limit order. So when you are buying or selling a stock, there are two ways in which you can execute your order. The first is the market order, where you are giving an instruction to buy or sell the stock at whatever is the current price that is going on in the market right now for that stock. It's like a no-brainer. जो भी price अभी है चलेगा. So in a market order, the order is filled immediately. So basically, in this kind of an execution, you have guarantee that the shares would be bought, but there is no guarantee at what price it would be bought. Just like how we saw above, the bid ask price keeps changing. Hence, there would be no guarantee in price when you are executing a market order. The other type of order is called a limit order. Now in the example that we saw above, where the bid ask spread was 100 to 100.2. So say that you put a limit order at 99.5. This means that your order will only and only get executed if the price of that stock hits 99.5 or lower. So in a limit order, your price is guaranteed. Like in our example, 99.5 or lower. But there is no guarantee that your order is going to be executed for sure. Because what if the price of that stock does not fall to 99.5? Well, then your order is just going to be left as it is. Now let's get to what is stop loss and target while trading. When you are buying a stock at say 10 rupees, you can simultaneously put a stop loss at 9.5 rupees. So this means that in the event that the price of the stock falls from 10 rupees to 9.5 rupees, your shares would automatically get sold. So in a way, what have you done? You have basically capped your loss at 0.5 rupees or 50 paise. Or in other words, you have stopped your loss. In exactly the same fashion, but just the opposite, is where you can also put a target. So say that you put a target of 5% and your share is currently at 10 rupees. So what this means is that if the price of your share increases by 5%, which means your 10 rupees becomes 10.5 rupees, your shares would automatically get sold and you will then pocket a return of 5%. Next, coming to the different values or prices of a stock, where we are going to be discussing face value of a stock, issue price and market price of a stock. The face value of a share, which is also called the par value, has more of an accounting significance than a practical significance and is not much of value to a shareholder unless and until dividends are declared. Too much information? Let's look at this slowly. The face value of a share has more of an accounting significance. Now, when we look at the balance sheet of a company, we see the words share capital. Now, share capital is basically the number of shares that the company has issued multiplied by the face value of the shares. Hence, face value has a lot of accounting significance. Now, face value of a share can be anything that is mutually agreed upon by the people who have founded the company. So it can be 2 rupees, 10 rupees, 5 rupees, 100 rupees. So say for example that I am one of the founders of a company into which I have invested 1 lakh rupees. Now all the founders, including me, mutually decide to keep the face value of each share at 10 rupees. So for the 1 lakh that I have invested in that company, I am going to get 1 lakh divided by 10, which is 10,000 shares. Now say in a few years down the line, our company grows and we decide to raise money through an initial public offering and in short, get our company listed on the stock exchange. So we decide to issue the shares in this IPO at 200 rupees. Now you may ask that if we paid 10 rupees per share, why would someone pay 200 rupees per share today? Well, just remember that this company has been in existence for many years and is worth much more than it was when we had started this company. Hence, we are going to issue it at a price that is much higher than the price that we had paid when we started the company. So this 200 rupees becomes the IPO price or the issue price. Now after the IPO, the shares of the company are listed on the stock exchange. Now let's assume that the demand for this company is very high because people are expecting this company to do well. And the price of the stock now increases to 250 rupees. So this 250 rupees is now the market price of the stock. So it is like, when we ask our vegetable vendor for say example some vegetable ka bhav kya chal raha hai in the market. Similarly, stock price ka bhav in the market is the market price of that stock. When a company declares a dividend, say that our company declares a dividend of 200%. This means that our company is paying out a dividend of 20 rupees, which is 200% of the face value of 10 rupees. So here, the importance of face value gets highlighted whenever a company declares a dividend. Otherwise, investors in general are only concerned with the market price of the stock, because the market price of the stock helps us determine how much capital gains we have made on the stock, or alternatively, how much capital losses we have incurred on that stock. What is stock split, stock consolidation, rights issue and bonus shares? Say you wake up one morning feeling absolutely positive and energetic and upbeat. You have your favorite coffee in one hand and turn on the business channel. Suddenly, that optimism and happiness turns into anxiety and despair. Why? Because one of the stocks that you had in your portfolio that was last priced at 1000 rupees is now suddenly flashing on the screen at 200 rupees. And you wonder what went wrong. I mean, you may think that you don't track your investments that often, but is this even possible? So is it possible that the share price has dropped to 1/5 of its value? Yes, it's possible. And is it possible that you have lost 80% of the value of your share overnight? Okay, now that seems a little unlikely. Now just remember that companies keep announcing certain decisions that could affect your shareholding in the company. And just in case you miss out on such announcements, it is possible that you may think that something has gone drastically wrong with the company. But see what may have happened. The company may have announced a 1:5 stock split, meaning that for every 1 share that I held in the company, now I would hold 5 shares. And simultaneously, the share price would reduce to 1/5, which means in this example, from 1000 to 200. So in value terms, earlier I had 1000 rupees worth of shares, and today also I have 1000 rupees worth of shares. The only difference being that earlier I had one share of 1000 rupees, and now I have 5 shares of 200 rupees each. Now the next logical question is, why would a company do that? Why does it need to split its stock? I mean, it's like share market already come complicated tha kya, that there are things like this to complicate it even more. But the logic behind this is that when a company splits its stock, it becomes more attractive and more affordable to a larger number of investors, and they are hence able to buy it in much bigger volumes. If I, as an investor, am getting 5 shares in 1000 rupees instead of 1 share in 1000 rupees, I would find the first option much more attractive. So in a similar fashion, as more investors participate in the purchase and sale of the security, the liquidity increases. Hence, if it so happens that the share price of a company has increased too much, which makes it difficult for the general participation of the public, the company may take a decision to split its stock up so that more investors can participate in it. Now imagine if the company were to do an exact reverse of this, which means that for every 5 shares held, I would get 1 share in return. Now this is what is called a reverse stock split, or also called a stock merger or a stock consolidation. So here, for every 5 shares of 200 rupees that I had, the company would now give me 1 share of 1000 rupees. Now the reason a company may resort to a reverse stock merger is if it wants to increase the perceived value of its stock, where a 1000 rupee stock would look more valuable than a 200 rupee stock. Now coming to the rights issue of shares. Now if a company wants to raise more capital, it can either do a follow-on public offering, where it can issue these shares to the general public and anyone from the general public can subscribe to these shares. Or the other option is where it can issue rights shares, which means that it gives the opportunity to its existing shareholders to buy these shares from the company, and that too at a discounted rate. So say that is a share that is trading at 100 rupees and the company announces a rights issue at 60 rupees in the ratio of 1:5, which means that for every 5 shares that I hold of the company, I am allowed to buy 1 share of the company at the discounted price of 60 rupees. Now, what if I am saturated with the company's holding and I don't want to buy any more of the company's shares? So should I let it expire worthless and not do anything about it? No. What you can do is you can actually sell the right of this stock on the stock exchange, because there are going to be investors there who are willing to buy this right from you so that they are able to go and purchase this share directly from the company. Now coming to bonus shares. Now bonus shares are issued by companies in lieu of dividend, which means that if a company does not want to pay out dividend for whatever reason, it can instead give bonus shares to its existing shareholders. Now, as the name suggests, this is like a bonus, which means that it is given to the shareholders at no extra cost. So say that a company declares a 1:3 bonus share issue. This means that for every 3 shares that I hold in the company, I will be issued 1 bonus share free of cost. Now, before the words free start flashing before your eyes, just remember that bonus shares are given to an equity shareholder instead of dividends. So in a way, ये हमारा हक का ही पैसा है. Coming to our last section, what is share buyback? You may have probably read sometime in the paper that an XYZ company is buying back its shares. Now it just sounds so bizarre that after all that effort and trouble that a company goes through to issue shares, why in the world would it want to buy its shares back? Well, share buybacks can be advantageous to a company for a variety of reasons. For starters, a company could be sitting on a lot of cash, which may actually just maybe be lying in their current account yielding pretty much nothing. So if a company feels like it may not really need this cash, maybe because they don't have any visibility of any maybe projects or business development or any kind of expansion whatsoever, then in a situation like this, instead of allowing that money to just sit idle in the bank account, it could actually buy back shares from the market. And how would this help? This would actually help to reduce the number of shareholders in the company, which means the number of people who have a right of ownership in the company would fall, and also the number of people who have a right on the profits of the company would also fall. So the company is actually putting that idle cash to much better use. Another case could be where the company actually thinks that its stock is trading much cheaper than it is actually worth, which means that it is undervalued. So in a case like this, the company could resort to a share buyback. And this also sends a signal to the market that the company believes that its shares are highly undervalued and catches the attention of the investors, which actually could help to push the prices of the stock up. If you have made it to the end of this video, I wish I could personally congratulate each one of you for upping your financial knowledge and successfully completing part 1 of the stock market series. See you in part 2 of this series, where we are going to learn how to read a company's financial statement in a very fun and engaging manner. If you have enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to my channel and also hit the like button.